We have Kat here, so we have a quorum. It's 6:03, I'm gonna call the meeting to order. And Kat, I don't know if you heard that last discussion around the tech side of things, but it would be great if you would like to speak, to use the raised hands icon, and then Courtney needs to physically switch something on the screen in order for us to be able to hear you. So I hope that you can hear me, if that makes sense.
She's unmuted. I wonder if she's trying to say something.
And if she had her video on, we would be able to actually see her raise a hand, eh?
Mm-hmm.
So that's an option too, Kat, if you want to turn your video on so that we could see you raise a hand, so that we can make sure to adjust on the screen so that we can hear you.
Mary, you're just kind of in and out. Like I can hear a little bit of what you're saying, but it's just echoey, and I'm really not catching everything that you're saying.
Okay.
I'm close to the microphone, so maybe it will help. We're on a brand new projector type thing, so we can't hear and speak from this at the same time. So I physically have to press a button. So we're wondering if you can use the raising hand feature if you need to speak, and then I can get up and switch the little button that we have.
Oh, or I didn't talk.
Hi Kat, it's Courtney, sorry. We have a new projector thing, and I have to physically change a setting on the projector when you want to talk. So we're wondering if you could use the raising hand feature, so that way I know that you're trying to speak and we can change it.
What are you thinking?
I'll chat with her.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so we are, I already called the meeting to order. On our consent agenda, we have our prior minutes from the August 16th meeting, and we have a number of second reads on policies, firearms and weapons, substitute teachers, foreign exchange programs relevant to the high schools only. Any discussion about the August minutes or any policy issues, concerns, questions? No? So I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda. We'll do that by roll. Kat?
I
Kat, were you able to hear me with the consent agenda motion?
Oh, there you
There
go. Thumbs up.
Sweet. Sarah? You good?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Laura, you good? Okay. And Mary is an aye. Okay.
Sorry.
Awesome, thumbs up, okay. Oh, Kat's waving her hands. We're here. Did you have something to say, Kat?
She can't hear us, though, right?
Oh, boy. Wow, this is, my goodness. Kat, are you able to hear us?
She can't respond if you don't.
Oh, boy.
It's going to be a challenge.
Should we have to type on phone?
Yeah, so she's giving you the signal. She's got the thumbs up.
All right.
There you go. I think you're gonna have to use those, Kat, and you've got the thumbs up that you can hear, so use the hand raise function if you wanna talk, and then we'll switch it back so that we can hear you. We'll figure out what the glitch is on this, for our next meeting.
So this is not a permanent
No, it is not.
situation?
There's a setting we haven't figured out yet on this.
Gotcha,
device.
understood. Okay, so just some troubleshooting still to do. Okay, perfect. Lynn, any need to reprioritize the flow of the meeting?
No.
No, okay. And I don't see anyone in the virtual realm, and we have no members of the public here for public comment. We do not have a spotlight for this month. So that brings us to you, Morgan.
That came around kind of fast, didn't it? The audit information is only informational this month. I'm looking for one motion from you regarding the VISBIT annual meeting, which is in Lake Maury in October. You've seen these motions at your local board meetings. The NMV board gave proxy to me. The ER board, what did they give proxy to? Akua. So this is to vote on your behalf at the VISBIT annual meeting. There are 2 seats on the board that are up for election. There's not much else that ever goes on at that meeting. Lynn and I will both be at that meeting, and Akua on the ER board will be at that meeting. And you're still in the maybe column.
I'm in the maybe, depending on work.
So your options are to give the proxy to another person, or you can give it to the VISBIT board.
I think that we should give it to Morgan, since you'll be there and you have the proxy for NMB.
Okay.
How do others feel about that?
I'm good with that.
That's good with that. All right, so I'll make a motion for Morgan to be our proxy for the VISBIT vote. We'll do that by roll. Kat?
Aye.
Kat, are you good with Morgan having, oh, sweet, see that? All right. Sarah?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
And Mary is an aye. Great. Is that it for you, Morgan?
That's it for me.
Okay,
I'll fill things up next month.
okay, October, we'll dive into budget in October, right?
Yep.
All right. Great, okay, moving on, Lynn, that brings us to you.
That also came around really quickly in this meeting.
I'm not ready either.
It's okay.
I am
So
ready now.
I'm gonna talk through, there are only really a couple of pieces in my slideshow that I need to project. I can talk through most of it. So under personnel, we have one action item, and that is hiring Kaden Hamlin, SU grant funded literacy interventionist position at Sheldon Elementary School. So it asked the board to make a motion to approve Kaden Hamlin.
Make a motion.
Thanks, Sarah. We'll do that by roll. Kat? Sarah?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye.
So is Kat.
Yep, I saw it. That's great, yep, thanks, Brian.
Jimmy, I don't believe there are any changes since we sent this out. Okay. So I do have a few things under the board monitoring plan data. One, I want to talk about the early signing bonus strategy. So one of our goals at the SU is around staff recruitment and retention. And one of the strategies that the SU board considered last year was an early contract signing bonus. And each of the district boards has had the opportunity to see what the district level data was, but you've not seen all of it together. So you could see of all of our schools, the percent of teachers who hadn't already identified that they weren't returning, they were retiring or something like that, the percentage of those people who returned their contract on that early, within the 5 days, and were eligible for that early contract signing bonus. So you can see that, I think the average, I forgot to write that down, but the average for the SU, I believe, was 90% of all educators returned within those first 5 days. And we had 2 schools, Bakersfield and Sheldon, that knew at the end of the 5 days, by the second week in April, who their people were going to be for the next year. They knew all of the puzzle pieces, which is an incredible win for us. And then there were, you can see several schools that had around 5 to 6% they were unsure about. And then there were just a couple of schools that had a few more that waited the full length. But all in all, it was a pretty successful strategy, looking at that data, both anecdotally and
Yeah.
the numbers.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments on the strategy?
And Lynn, I think that on the NMB side, we discussed at the last meeting, getting some of the data around the actual kind of financial impact of it, because it was funded through some of the ESSER money, so we won't have that moving forward. So I guess that same ask might be helpful for our October meetings, like
Yes.
given the ESSER funds, which will be dwindling, what does that look like, and where would we conceivably, if we wanted to replicate it moving forward, where would we get that money in?
Yes, that'll be a part of your October consideration. So our intention, Morgan's gonna be helping, he thinks he's done, but he's really not done, because he's gonna be helping me with my board report tonight, but we're planting a lot of seeds tonight, because in October, we start to actually build the budget, and we start to ask you to make some decisions. So tonight, we're doing some review, we're planting some seeds, we wanted you to have this data, we'll bring the financial piece back next month,
Great.
but we'll keep you moving in that direction, so you're ready
Perfect.
for those discussions. So next up is about, one of our goals is around early literacy and academic proficiency. There has been a significant delay in terms of the release of the state standardized assessment results. So we recently learned that the 21-22 data, I just want to repeat that, the 21-22 data, so it's more than 2 years old at this point, 2 school years old, is no longer embargoed, so we're able to release some of it. So the state has an accountability metrics that they need to use with schools in order to determine how they're doing to meet the state goals that are established. So I'm gonna pass around some packets for people to take a look at. I'll pass to you this way. I think I should have enough for everyone. And this is definitely going to be data that you're going to probably want to take home and take a look at. You won't likely have an opportunity to look at all of it. I'm going to do my best to describe it to you, but I'll be honest, there are still some pieces that I am not 100% certain how they're calculated. It's not completely transparent to me. So for anybody who is watching, if you want to see this data, you can go on the Agency of Education website and you can look up annual school snapshot, and you can search by school or supervisory union. So what I'm sharing tonight to begin with is data around Franklin Northeast performance. So there are 5 categories that they measure: academic proficiency, personalization, safe and healthy schools, and high quality staffing and investment priorities. So you also, as board members, can get in there and you can drill in even further with some of this data, but I'm giving you a high level for now. So you can see that there's a key that shows whether you're not meeting, improving, approaching, meeting, exceeding, or declining. So those keys are telling you a story of how we're doing overall. So in terms of academic proficiency, overall our current performance, and I say current, but this is based on assessments from data from 2022, we're approaching in academic proficiency, we're meeting in personalization, we're exceeding in safe and healthy schools, we're meeting in high quality staffing, and we're meeting in investment priorities. And our trends range from improving, declining in personalization, which that doesn't make sense to me at all, so I don't know how they're getting that data. Excelling, declining in the high quality staffing, and again, that staffing has to do with ratios and other factors too that we really have to drill into to see what that's coming from, and excelling in investment priorities. So also in this, and I won't go through each of these pieces, but you can see where we are in terms of the content standard data. So ELA, math, science are all areas that we're approaching. Actually, let me back up for 1 second. On that first page, there's the performance category. So the current is how we're doing now, and the change is from the last time we took the assessment until this time, when we took the assessment, that change, were we improving, were we declining, excelling, or staying the same, okay? And then to the right of that is an equity index, and that has to do with comparing, our marginalized, historically marginalized populations and how they're doing compared to, their peers. So that's really looking at how well are students in special education doing, how well are students, our BIPAC students doing, our emerging multilingual students, and so on. So that's really looking at, are we closing the gap in terms of, their performance, okay? So you'll see also that the data, some of the data is suppressed because our numbers are too small, so we can't give you data on the English language proficiency because there were only 7 students in that subgroup that year that we took this. Information about graduation rates, college and career readiness, personalization, and then safe and healthy schools, that's centered solely on disciplinary exclusion data. It looks like that's the only metrics that they're looking at there. In terms of high quality staffing, they're looking at the licensure status of educators and educator retention. Investment priorities, they're looking at the staffing ratios that are recommended within the ed quality standards, and they're looking at, by way of example, I think the ratio for nurses is something like 1 nurse per 500 students in the ed quality standards. So if we have about that level, that's a positive for us. If we have more than 500 students per nurse, it's a negative. If we have less than 500 students per nurse, it's also negative. So that's how they're determining that. I don't know more detail than that. I just know that that's how they're figuring it out. And the per pupil spending is another piece, and I don't know that calculation necessarily matches our data, so I'm not sure how they're calculating that. I gave you some state level data, so it's too bad that it's on the back of the page. But that state data, if you wanted to look at that and compare it to the SU data, you can see how we're doing in comparison to the rest of the state. It is pretty similar. I think there's maybe only one area that we're not seeing change. Then I gave you just the front page for each school, so you can take a look at what the performance and equity index is for each of the different 9 schools in the SU.
And then can I ask you one quick clarifying question?
Yes.
With the current, there's the current column and the change column right next to it. Is that a change from the year prior?
Well, the last time they took that assessment, because we had that 1 year during COVID when we didn't take it, so I believe that's based on the change from the previous assessment window.
Okay.
And
And do we know what that window, like how many years prior that was?
I think it was 1920 that we were exempted, so it would have been 2021, it would have been the year prior that we did take it.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
So the strange part is, we would typically have looked at this last fall, right, or at some point last school year, because we were about ready to receive data. We already kind of behind the scenes have some data from the first time we, as a state, have taken the VT CAS assessment. This is all based on SBAC. So then we made a shift as a state to a new standardized assessment. And so that data is about to also be released. So I don't know how it will transfer from this format to having new data, what that's gonna look like in terms of comparison, because there'll be apples and oranges in terms of the comparison. So I'm gonna encourage us when we look at that to think about this as this is our baseline with a new assessment, and we're gonna figure out where we are, where we were at the end of last year, and work on growth in terms of where we're heading at the end of this next year. So I'll get that to you as soon as it's released. I was hoping that we were gonna get the word from the agency that we could let that go out, but to my knowledge, I know I spoke with, might have been Mary. Mary is our state assessment coordinator for FNESU, and she had not received the word that it was released yet. So still embargoed for now. Any questions about this? It's not typically how we look at data. I'm gonna try to get some of the real numbers at the district level so that you can look at kind of your district data in terms of proficiency percentages. Okay. One thing I can add is based on what Mary heard from some of the communication she received from the agency, I think we can expect to see that in October at the October meeting. But that, I'll just be transparent, that has been delayed further than we expected to have it by now, so I'm hopeful that we'll see it.
So then some of this is derived from, obviously, especially around academic proficiency, from standardized testing that's done, but how, I mean, are they coming into all of our schools and to assess these things like personalization and some of these more nuanced pieces? What are they basing these determinations on if they're not in our schools seeing how safe and healthy they are?
It's a really great question, Mary. So, by way of safe and healthy schools, the only indicator that I see when you go to turn 3 pages in where it's for safe and healthy schools, it's disciplinary exclusion data. So that's what's being weighed there. So they pull that out. It's data mining out of what we put into PowerSchool. So that they draw state reports out of our data that's online. And we have to, there are several points in here where we have to release reports to the agency. That one I understand a little bit more than schools offering flexible pathways. We have so many flexible pathways opportunities at FNESU that I really have no idea how they could be gauging us as not meeting and declining, because we have accelerated the number of students that are accessing flexible pathways. So I wonder if there is something in PowerSchool that they're looking to be checked that isn't being checked. I mean, I don't know. They're not reaching out and saying, hey, give us this data. It's something that's getting extrapolated from data that they have.
Right, and some of these are really narrow metrics that they're using.
I was a little surprised, to be honest, that we saw the snapshot, and I did share this at the state level, because when former Secretary French was here, he had indicated that the snapshot was something the agency was going to be moving away from. And then all of a sudden, this is new, that this was coming back around for us. So I have a lot of questions myself about how they got some of these data points, and we have not had an opportunity, nor do I see if there are opportunity in the future to really kind of dive into that, but we'll try.
And so are there expectations on the part of the AOE now that like the districts or the supervisory unions need to kind of respond to these in any way, or is it more informational for our purposes to kind of sift through it and see what really, like, what lands, like, given how, I mean, that seems like a really paltry way to assess safe and healthy schools, or like you said, are, it's not really taking into consideration how we actually really excel in our flexible pathways. So seems more important for us to then kind of decide where are the nuggets of helpful information to guide our work, because we know better than they do really what's happening on the ground in our schools.
And this is something, so when we think about the board monitoring plan, we weren't able to have our board retreats earlier this week, and that's something we were gonna work on together, but when we're thinking about the board monitoring plan, as you're going through this, so something stands out like the number of students who are accessing flexible pathways in their high school, you can say to me, hey, can you give us data in the board monitoring plan? So you bring us something in January or March or whatever you tell me to bring you data on that, and we can agree upon what data you're looking for, and we can dig in a little further. So if you see that nugget and it creates a wonder, that's a good opportunity for you to think about what are our board goals, what are our priorities, and where do we as a board want more information? Because I agree, this is just, this is a scratch at the surface, and it raises questions just about how they got there. So maybe it's exactly right, but we could do our own data mining to try to figure out if there's more work we need to do in certain areas.
Right.
I will say that I don't think the intention of this, I don't think the target audience of this is necessarily our school boards. I think that this is required under the ESSA plan, so I think this checks an accountability box for Vermont in terms of accountability measures that they have for public schools in Vermont, and being able to determine the performance level and comparison performance levels of schools across the state. So I think that that's one of the requirements, and then I think us looking at it at the board level, and like I said, having those conversations about what else do we want to see data about.
Yeah.
So we can give you some time to look at this, you can have a conversation about what data you want to see, you can give me feedback in October. I would love to have some feedback from the board about what you want to see from us in the board monitoring plan.
Well, I think that it might be nice to have a little time to digest it for the board. So I would say that it could somewhat be board homework between now and October, and then we can all follow up with what questions it generates as far as more data and what we might like to have kind of clarified or elaborated upon. How's that land?
I'd be curious what what new data is gonna show compared to this data. If this is like different because it is different than the SBAC. Look at that first and then go from there and figure out what we need.
Yeah, well, I mean, it might actually work out that way, because if we can, we'll bring that BTCAS data to the next meeting. And then hopefully you will have seen other data at your local district boards as well. And then you could, what I want from the board is for you to push on us and be curious and say, okay, we're working on social emotional learning, but we're not getting data back. So tell us what you're looking for. Tell us what you're looking for around academic proficiency. So if you're not getting enough data, that's where I want you to be curious, and that helps me to design what that board monitoring plan is that I can then bring back and have our principals bring back to you. Okay? All right. Next, I'd like to just talk about negotiations. So the FNESU support staff agreement expires on June 30th. So I recommend that the board instructs me to notify the Cold Hollow Education Association of an intent to negotiate.
I'll make that motion. By roll, Kat. Sarah.
Aye.
Maura.
Aye.
Aaron. Aye. And Mary is an aye. Lynn, on that note then, who is on our negotiation committee? Morgan, do you want to refresh our memories? I know it's me.
That was Kuna and Sarah.
Was it you, Aaron? So it was Mary, Aaron?
Sarah and Akua for ER, and John and Mary for NMB.
But
Right now, I'm
Stepped on for.
yeah.
Yes.
So John did teachers, Aaron couldn't do teachers, so Aaron does support staff.
Oh,
I
right,
couldn't do support staff.
okay,
Three plus.
okay. And it's not a teacher contract negotiation here, just support staff. Okay, great,
I'm glad you asked that question, Mary.
okay.
Okay, so we're gonna move on. Unless there's anything else you want to say under negotiations?
No, all set.
So now is where we talk about planting seeds for conversations as we're building the next budget. So we're at that place that we've been talking about for a few years. You know, as a result of COVID, a lot of money was invested into schools in the form of the American Recovery Act, the ESSER grant money. So we put some positions in that ARP ESSER funding. And so now we're in a place, you don't have to decide today, but we need to have some conversations moving forward about what positions still exist in the ARP ESSER, and then what's the intention of the board. So we're gonna be asking you to think about, are these positions that we wanna move forward with? And if we do, what's the mechanism by which we want to fund them? So this is kind of a multifaceted thought process, I wanna lay some track here. So we're gonna have some conversations about, does it make the most sense for those to continue to live at the SU level? Are those local level positions that we're going to ask the district boards to consider? Or do they remain, do we build them into the SU budget? The other factor that we're going to talk about is, we have two things happening in this next budget year. We have the funding cliff of ARP ESSER that we're standing at the top of right now, but we also are a historically really low spending school. So Act 173 was written for schools like our schools. The intention behind Act 173, we're gonna get into that. It was written for schools that have not been able to provide the same opportunities for their kids. So as you're thinking about these things, think about when we go through this conversation about the positive impact that the pupil weights will have on your ability to invest in opportunities for kids. So currently, just in terms of staffing, what exists in that ARP ESSER grant is we have 2.75 family engagement coordinators. And that is, you're gonna have to help me with which schools those.
Two
two of
Richards,
each. One.
and Bakersfield, Berkshire, and Montgomery.
Share one. Okay.
And then there are two other positions funded through consolidated federal grants at Enosburg Elementary and an opening at Enosburg High School.
So we've already seen some schools make choices to fund those locally and pull those into their budgets, because they wanted their people in-house. So we still have the two Richfords and then the one shared position between three of the NMB schools. We also have the Director for the Advancement of Educational Equity. We have 3 FNESU instructional coaches that it's Marty and Leslie and Amber, and we have the Flexible Pathways staff. That is 4 teachers and a half-time coordinator. We have a half-time SEL coordinator. I think we might have had that budgeted. It doesn't matter, but we're paying it a half-time SEL coordinator. And one of the things that we rolled into our ESSER was recognizing a need, pretty significant need at Richford Elementary School for some additional time support at the administrative level, and included a 0.25 position for an assistant principal there. So they rolled a piece of that into their local, and that's what remains. Any questions on staffing?
Can you just back up to that one? So Lynn, currently these are all funded through the ESSER grants, but these are considered SU positions.
All the ESSER money goes through the SU, so they're all here.
And some of those positions, the people they kind of apply across both districts. And some are specific to a particular district
Correct.
Or school, yes.
or school.
Exactly.
Just had to do with the strategy that we were working on.
Right, okay.
So if there's no question about staffing, we'll move on to the Flexible Pathways Academy. That's something that we fund, I meant to take that highlighter off. We fund that through ARP ESSER, so as you know, that this is something that we started out of necessity during COVID, and it's something that the board has continued to approve, and we've continued to fund through ARP ESSER, and we're in that place where we're gonna have to think about what are we gonna do with those positions in this program. So I wanna make sure that I'm planting all of the seeds with you. So we have a half-time FBA coordinator, because Gab also has another half-time position as our co-interim curriculum director. And we have 4 full-time FPA teachers. We have a little bit of money in ESSER for the Flexible Pathways Academy that has been set aside. So the fully virtual part of FPA, they're serving 10 students. But it is important to note that those teachers are also the teachers that are allowing us to be able to run our STEPS program. So all of our students that are in the special program, both the elementary and the middle school side of the program, those teachers Zoom in and they do all the direct instruction for those students, because otherwise we would need to hire, in order for us to be able to operate a completely alternative school, we would have to hire licensed educators. And at the middle school, that would have to be by content. So you'd have to have a math, a science, a social studies, and an ELA. And in the elementary side, you would have to have a K-6 elementary teacher, because they have to have access to core instruction. So that program is serving both purposes of being able to allow students the flexibility and families the flexibility of having that fully virtual option, while also making it so that we can operate the alternative program.
And do you, Morgan, know how much just the Flexible Pathways Academy costs on an annual basis, these 4.5 FTEs total for what looks like 24 kids?
I don't, but I can get that. I mean, teachers in the 60 to 80 with benefits range.
So there's other data I'm asking him to bring, because I think you need the whole picture when you look at this, because on the surface of this, it's like, oof. But then what I would really like you to take a look at is, we have historical data about the amount of money we were spending for each individual student to go to an outside alternative placement. Some of those students, we had just transportation alone contracts that were, what were some of those? 30, 40,000?
55,000 to go from Kingsburg to Colchester.
So that's just the transportation piece. So some of those were $100,000 or $150,000 per student. So I want to make sure that we, when we're factoring like the cost of FPA, we're also looking at that and comparing it to what it would cost us. Not that there are 14 spots, because there are not 14 spots anywhere. If we were to say like we want out of district placements instead for those students, but I want to look at like what would we be paying if we were paying out of district to transport and pay the costs associated with their tuition, and sometimes there's extra staffing costs in those programs on top of what their tuition is, and then compare that to what we're spending in FPA and also what we're spending in the STEPS program, because I think we have to look at all of that as you're making that decision. So Morgan, I know is already working on putting some of that data together for you for next time.
Right. It's only 3 teachers for K-8, just
Oh, okay.
Did we say 4? I heard 4.5, but I just.
Well, I was just going from what's up on the
It's just
slide.
only 3 teachers for
Two
the
teachers
K
and
to 8,
interventionists.
and then 1 for 9-12.
Platform, oh, she's.
Oh, because we made that shift from, oh yeah,
Cynthia's not.
we didn't, so, yeah. We'll have to reflect that. So we do have some of the art funding for Cynthia, who's shifted to the 9-12 FPA.
And so it seems as though, given how difficult hiring is, it would be probably hard to find these teachers in all these content areas to work for the STEPS program, were we not to use this online platform for them as well.
Correct.
Not to mention the fact that generally we're looking at 14 students with costs of anywhere from, say, 50 grand on the, on low end to $100,000+ per student for out-of-district placements that don't even really exist anymore, not the,
Right. I would say like 70 to 150.
yeah, okay.
The 50 was transportation.
You're right, that was just the transportation.
And what did we hear from the students and the families of the K through 8? I mean, this might be a question for Gab. I mean, were the program to not exist, what would those families and those 10 students do? Do you think a lot of them would return to a homeschooling model? Do you think some of them would come into our brick and mortar?
I think I can pretty confidently tell you, just because it's a very small number, minus the STEPS kids, that probably 6 would be homeschooled and 2 might go into a brick and mortar.
Yeah.
I'm sure about the other 2.
I'm not positive, I'm making an estimate, but I'm fairly certain that 6 would be homeschooled.
Yeah. And at one point, we were talking about how, like, I remember when we were starting this Flexible Pathways Academy, we discussed the possibility that people might tuition in from out of our SU eventually. Has that happened at all, or we're mostly catering to our students in the SU and our STEPS program?
My understanding is we can't do that very easily K-8, because there are
Okay.
not very many schools that send.
Right, that have choice at that level, sure.
9-12, we are definitely getting people coming into our, choosing us from the schools,
Okay,
so that they can have the flexibility.
right.
There's no question that we are definitely getting some.
Do you, just for context, Gab, do you have a ballpark number for the number of high school students?
Yeah, oh yeah, 37. 37.
Oh, 37 that are using the Flexible Pathways Academy.
High school.
High school,
9-12.
on top of the 10 K through 8, on top of the 14
Yep.
in the STEPS program.
The high school's
Okay.
growing for sure.
Okay.
Faster. We got 4 like the first week of school, we got 4 new.
Oh, okay, that's super helpful information.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're also using, I don't know what your number is, 9-12 for STEPS.
4.
So
I have
they're,
18 kids total on the steps, so 4 high school investor.
so they're also using resources out of FPA for high school.
It's a little bit different, but Cynthia is all 9-12. Actually, she's 7-12 for step, or she's 7-12.
So we're really talking about 69, 70-ish kids total.
We are, and this is where it gets complicated, because this part of it was a pilot, so we built that into our ESSER. FPA to 9-12 level existed pre-COVID. So that was
Right.
all funded out of the ER district.
Gotcha.
So right now we're struggling with multiple funding sources. So we've tried to pull out the pieces that we're funding here. So some of it's definitely gotten gray because we've used some of this at the 9-12 level, and then the conversations we'll have to have as Morgan walks each board through what should live locally and what should live at the SU level, and that's where we're gonna have to tease these pieces apart, because
Right,
as we're talking 9-12, we might wanna right-size that and put the pieces into those districts' budgets, because it also, we had this conversation, has an impact on, you wanna capture the expenses that are actually happening at the high school. It has an impact on your tuition amount.
right,
So we're gonna have some thoughtful conversations
right.
about that.
So that high school component in some ways is more appropriately placed in the ER district budget, but the K through 8 and the steps, that is something accessed by all kids across the SU regardless of their district boundaries.
And because STEPS is run through our special ed program, that's an SU program as well.
But the kind of nexus of it is that were it to not be funded, it would reverberate quite strongly and negatively for both our districts and the entire SU, for sure. Because we don't have, we certainly don't have an alternative model for the STEPS program. So it seems like the task is gonna be not if we're gonna fund it, but how we're gonna fund it.
The other thing about STEPS is that we do have the potential to tuition some kids in, maybe, right? That's a little grayer, because they wouldn't need to be, should I not?
No, it's okay. So what we're doing is getting out there. There are some other towns, there was just something in, 7 Days or Digger recently, South Burlington, and what was the second one? Essex are both working to build their own alternative programs, and they're getting a lot of attention for that. We don't tend to draw as much attention as where we are, but we are getting noticed, and I'm being contacted or Michelle's being contacted from our colleagues saying, will you please let us tuition this child to you? And right now, we're saying, no, we have to meet the needs that we have, because I really would consider that we have a wait list in-house, and until we can get to a place where we have stabilized and are meeting our needs, I don't think we should open that necessarily up to that conversation. But down the road, this definitely could be something that if we build our capacity and continue to, get better and better in this new realm for us and have success with our students, that we might be able to draw in some tuition money, because we do have by policy the ability to accept tuition from other systems, not from individuals. But there are, like Gab was saying, there's another piece of this where not a lot of elementary schools across the state are choice elementary schools, but there are some. There are some that are non-operating districts that tuition to other elementary schools, so.
I think eventually they would be able to do that through the special education process anyways.
That's actually what I was getting at, that it doesn't have the same barrier, not that we have the capacity to do it. But.
Yeah.
And not to brag, but I'm going to for a second. Some of my other colleagues have hired companies to come in, pay a large fee to have a company come in and find the space, hire the staff, create all of the programming, and they don't have any part of it. They just find somebody else to do it. So we find it a little bit.
Unlike creating it
Unlike doing it
from the ground
ground
up. Exactly, yeah.
Firm is finishing some doors today.
Bravo.
So I'll take us on a little tangent here, because I don't think we've had the opportunity to say this at the SU level, but the amount of work that has gone into building this program has been unbelievable to watch inside this. I know Vern has been run ragged in trying to pull that off and get us open for the start of the year, but no one has been more run ragged than Michelle, and Michelle has just done an incredible job of figuring it out, because we aren't trained, like in our original training, we're having to learn as we're shifting what our role is in public education to learn to meet more of the mental health challenges that are coming our way because of the lapse in other resources for us. So we're figuring it out, and she's working really, really hard. She's built a really strong team too, and I think that, you know, I know, so I hear it. I know sometimes we hear grumblings about, you know, the positions at central office and why are there more positions than there were 30 years ago. The reality is times are incredibly different, and what we're trying to accomplish and the needs of the students is really different, and the resources that are out there to help support those needs that used to be there are gone. So I'm proud of what we're doing. I stand behind the staffing decisions we've made in our office and the programs that we have established, and we're seeing other people ask questions, and they're trying to model some of the similar decisions that we've made after what we've been doing. So I think we'll start to see more and more systems try to replicate this because the need is so high.
Yeah, so trying to get people to understand that the law, like special educational law says that it is our duty to, you know, provide a free appropriate public education. And then you use data to determine what the best placement is. But there are no placements anymore. So we're, you know, as Lynn mentioned, I'm trying to even get the staff to understand, because sometimes they're like, poof, we're not making the progress that we need to make with the student. And in a typical situation, you would pull the IEP team together, say, okay, we're not making progress, we need to look somewhere else for a placement. But those placements don't exist. Or if the IEP, if the team decides that a student needs a residential placement, like there's no, the law says, send them to a residential placement, but there aren't any. And so what do you do in the meantime for these, until these placements become available is the tricky spot, and is what we've been working on and trying to figure out what are our hard limits and where do we go. And so we've had some growing pains at the beginning of the year, but they're getting better every day is a better day. So, and you know, did missing some doors and made some important parts, but we're getting in the right direction.
Right.
So I'll shift to Act 173. So this is just a reminder as we go into, we just talked about kind of the funding cliff things, the mechanisms that, or the positions and things that we're gonna have to consider as we're building the budget. I'm gonna talk a little bit about just reminding you about the intent of 173. So we talked a lot in the last couple of years about that weighting study and looking at how you get the equalized pupil count and how certain students with certain factors, they essentially weigh more. So an elementary student would be, by way of example, one student. A high school student might be 1.4 students. That weighting mechanism hadn't changed for 20 years. Now they've made significant shifts and have really accelerated the weight for us. What is really pushing us into a positive area is they've significantly accelerated the ratio for students who live in poverty. And we serve so many students in poverty. We're actually a system that's going to benefit from this shift. So the whole goal behind this in shifting the weights is to try to make it so that the opportunities that students experience in Vermont schools are less dependent on which zip code they live in. And it's more about, we want to provide more equitable opportunities for all of our students so that we can get more equitable outcomes for all of our students in the state. So there are some students, some systems are advantaged by these new weights, and some are disadvantaged. So do you want to talk about this? I'm following a little bit on the last part about the tax rate piece.
Yeah, and I think the 5 board members here have heard it a couple of times already. So this slide is taken straight from the AOE, and they are, in their public meetings, they are really pushing people to keep in mind the intent behind the law, this was not a law to cut tax rates. It was really a law to get some more equity in the system. So if you're a district like both of ours, it's going to see a higher pupil number in next year's budget. You kind of have two options. You can raise the amount of money you spend, and your tax rate will stay relatively same where it is, depending on how much you put in there. Or if you don't raise your spending, your tax rate is gonna go down. It hits a certain floor. So that mechanism has been the same for the last 20 years, but we're gonna see a huge increase in one of those factors that we're always waiting for in December, and with bated breath, because we know that we have to make budget decisions after that number drops. So that is kind of the big picture of it. The districts that are losing that tax capacity have a soft landing, so this is not gonna, it's not gonna hit us all in FY25. It's gonna be trickling in over the next 5 years.
About 20% a year, is that what it was?
And you go to the next slide, I think, Courtney. And so I've showed you these numbers before as well, and they're very squishy, but if we looked at the budgets for this year, we knew that we were getting those pupils, and we made changes, and no other districts made any changes in the state. Enosburg Richford could have raised about 1.7 million more for the same tax rate, and then MV could have raised 2.5 million more for the same tax rate. So that's money that you could have spent on those kids in this school year. Those numbers are probably pretty close to accurate next year if nobody else in the state changes their behavior. But we do know that all of the districts that are getting advantaged are looking at this as an opportunity not to lose the investments they've made in ESSER. And the districts that are going to be negatively impacted, I think, are all going to be, many are going to be budgeting to that cap that slowly goes down, so we're not going to see the advantage of that right away.
There's a little bit of there's a double impact for many of those schools because they're in the same place we are in terms of the funding cliff with the ARP ESSER. So they have put positions in, we try to be thoughtful, and it feels like a lot of positions, but I don't think that we have a lot comparatively. I think there are other systems that put a lot more positions into their budgets. So they're gonna have to figure out their funding cliff with the staffing that they built into our ESSER, while at the same time having the first hit in the reduced weights for them. So about 20% of that impact in that first year. So it's a double whammy for them. So if I had to forecast what I think is gonna happen, I think we're gonna have the advantage of this capacity in terms of building opportunities for our students, which is the intent of the law. And I hope that we keep focused on that in terms of our work through the budgeting process. But I also think we're going to get a double benefit because I do think that there will be some positions. There were a lot of positions funded. There were positions that were funded in some of the Chittenden County schools, by way of example, that I don't know that they'll be able to, I mean, I don't know with certainty, but I have a wonder if they'll be able to maintain their same staffing levels with this funding cliff. And I wonder if we'll benefit from some of those people now looking back to us to see if we have positions for them. So it would be unfortunate for some of them, but it might be fortunate for us that my hope is we'll see more people looking to Franklin Northeast the next hiring season. Okay, next up, in terms of just information I want the board to have is about our literacy program. So we have used the Lucy Culkin's units of study in reading and writing. That is run out of Teachers College. It's research that has come out of Teachers College. And there has been this reading war that has been waged. We've seen this before. I've seen this before in my career. We've seen the pendulum swing from one side to the other. Recently, the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project just announced that they're disbanding. So it would not be appropriate for us to continue on using the units of study in our K-8 buildings. So we will continue to use them through the remainder of this year because it is the resource that we have. We don't have a replacement resource. Gab and Leah have done a fabulous job of saying, okay, we need to come up with a process for figuring out where we go, and they have designed a a process that we're going to use to make a determination about what is next for us in terms of a literacy resource. So that's something that we're going to be working on. We're gonna pull together a new resource discovery committee to explore several evidence-based programs, get feedback from educators, and then make a decision. And the intention will be to start the next school year with a new reading and writing literacy program. Any questions on that? Okay. So next, we're going to talk about something that might seem foreign to people because it's not something we've ever had to talk about before. We, first of all, it's exciting. There's a solar eclipse coming on April 8th, 2024. I have known about this for about 6 months, and I will say in the beginning, I wasn't really fully grasping what's probably gonna happen in Vermont on April 8th, 2024. So this part of northern Vermont is on what is called the path of totality. So this is, very few places in the world are on the same path of totality for the solar eclipse. I think one of the things I read is this isn't gonna happen again for like 3,000 years. It's a crazy number of years. So a lot of people are going to flock to Vermont. In our region in particular, Sheldon Elementary School is kind of like, there's something about right exactly where that school is that is gonna be a huge draw to people. And there are a few other schools kind of along that path as well. So we have had the alarm bells raised by people from the NOAA group, the weather people, and we've had meteorologists and like emergency management people have all kind of weighed in that we need to plan for this because this is going to impact transportation on that day. So the Champlain Valley Superintendent's Group met recently and looked at information that was coming in from all of these groups and made a decision that on that day, we're going to, let me back up one more thing. The eclipse is going to be, it'll be the total eclipse at like between 3:30 and 3:40 in the afternoon. So a lot of our kids on a typical day would be on a bus heading home when that happens. But what they're telling us to imagine is more than 250,000 people flocking to our area to come observe this. So what we're hearing is all the hotels in Burlington are booked. The prices for the hotels are astronomical. I'm hearing from people even in this room who have Airbnbs or who have lodging that their places have been booked for months. So I know we can't quite imagine it, but we all agree that it's the right thing to do. So we're going to make that a half day. On our calendar, April 9th is supposed to be a scheduled half day. I'm gonna communicate with families that we're gonna flip those 2 days. So we'll go to school all day on April 9th, but we will release students at a half day on April 8th. We're also going to have to think about what's the learning opportunity because it's pretty exciting. These kids hopefully will remember this for the rest of their lives. We're even hearing if you don't order your solar eclipse glasses ASAP, you might not be able to get your solar eclipse glasses. So we're going to be ordering those right away. There's an interactive map I see that Morgan has just pulled up, so you're welcome to look that up online. But you definitely can just see it's pretty cool where it's hitting right over the top of us. So, any questions about that? We're told to expect traffic issues starting midday until 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. I had a conversation with someone from the VPA last week, and I think our recommendation was, at least in our region, we're not gonna have games and evening events that night because we're going to have issues with traffic.
I thought that problems are grateful news or?
Fish, it's fish.
Do you
you think most schools in the region, most others, the other supervisory unions in the region are going to follow suit? Or this is
All of Champaign
mandated?
Valley, it's a common agreement in all of Champaign Valley, so it is Franklin, Grand Isle, all of Chittenden, and half of Addison.
And you don't know yet about, have you heard from Lamoille and
I
over
don't,
that way?
because not all schools are in this path of totality.
Gotcha.
Because some will be below, so they'll have less of an impact. So
Okay.
if you look at the map, it is this like Champlain Valley region that it kind of cuts right through. So I don't know, I didn't look at Lamoille County to see if if you're in that path or not.
And so are they anticipating like people are just gonna be pulling over alongside road, like the roads, and to just park it and find their spot?
Yeah. I had a hard time, I'll be honest, I had a hard time wrapping my brain around this. And now I literally, I was telling my team today, we had leadership, that I had someone send me a webinar and they said, if you want more information, watch this. And it was a group that was talking about an experience with something similar and how like their emergency management and all their people were reflecting on lessons learned from this time and things we should consider. It's 4 hours long.
Whoa.
And I thought, oh, maybe I should anticipate that this is gonna be more challenging than what I can imagine. So I take your word for it. Yeah, I'm gonna believe you. So we're just gonna make the shift, get our kids home safe and sound. And teach.
Makes
about
sense.
this. So I brought it to you because a lot of the other schools are communicating with their boards in this week window, and we're gonna push it out to our families in a similar time frame. So probably by the end of this week or beginning of next week, I'll push something out to families and staff.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thanks.
That's all I
Lynn.
have.
Okay. All right, so moving on to, the central office report.
You got a letter.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I just have a question, Lynn. If there's really like 250,000 people coming to the area, do you think that even having a half day of school is going to be like sufficient? Like, I'm even worried about like the safety of, like, are people going to be swarming the schools, like trying to park, you know, and if they've traveled to do this, I can't think they're going to show up at noon. I would think people are going to be like tenting out the night before or something, trying to get a good spot wherever they're trying. So I'm just wondering, like, is even having a half a day, do you think going to be like sufficient to keep the kids, you know, I guess safe and getting safely home? Obviously no one knows, we've never done this before, but it just sounds crazy. So
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think there's no way really to anticipate that. The releasing early was the recommendation that we received. I definitely have, had this conversation with the leader about, what if people do show up and try to camp out? I mean, I think in particular in Sheldon, because that is, people want to be near there. We're gonna probably engage conversations with our law enforcement partners too, just about the school property and trying to keep people off that, just for safety. So, I mean, one of the things that I'll probably communicate home, Kat, is parents could also have the option, if they don't want to send their children to school that day, they could choose to keep them home. I just don't know that any of us can really anticipate. I don't think we can anticipate what that's gonna be. I wanna react in a cautious way, but I also don't wanna be so overly cautious that we miss the opportunity to talk with our students about it and send them home with those solar glasses and, still capture that day.
Just see people coming on the weekend
Yeah.
and start camping on Sunday.
Right.
You could,
We can make a decision, it'd be like a snow day decision, right?
right, we could have bad weather that
Right.
Well, we could have a blizzard that day.
We're in northern Vermont, it could be a mud
Little
season
do all
day.
these people traveling all this way know that it's very much still winter sometimes
Yes.
on April 8th.
Mud season.
Yes.
But that's a good point, JD, like we'll, if we start to see you know, the fish effect or whatever that was.
$5 a shower at Sheldon, get 2, you can make some money.
Okay. I mean, I do think that especially if you're saying that Sheldon is the nexus of this path of totality,
Looks
that-
like it goes over Richford High School, Berkshire Elementary, and Clips, pretty close to
so
Sheldon
it does
Elementary.
seem like involving our law enforcement
is.
people to keep folks off of school property from a sheer liability perspective. We don't want hordes of people on our soccer fields camping out and stuff.
I don't understand exactly what it is about Sheldon, but Sheldon was something that got brought to our attention a while ago, like these weather enthusiasts, or is that what we
Yeah,
say?
and he's from New Hampshire,
And
like
like
he reached out
they're
to.
so interested, there's
Wow.
something really specific about Sheldon, what's
Wow.
gonna happen there, so.
They reached out to me a long time ago, and then they ended up reaching out to Sheldon. And they were able to meet with them, and he came up, and and this was all in the
You made sure
spring.
they all had their solar eclipse glasses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like this was all in the spring.
It's like the 15 minutes of fame for
Yeah.
Sheldon,
Yeah.
but a bit longer.
Get the hiring flags out.
All right.
Put us on the map.
Wow. Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it goes right over the school.
So right, we definitely want to keep people off of school
Can you
property.
flip that around just so they can see?
Sure, or do you want me to share?
Yeah, you're
That
our
is
co-host.
amazing. Go figure.
Right?
It's wild.
You know, I've had some crazy things come up since I've been a superintendent. When I first heard this, I thought, is somebody filming this?
Wow, look at that.
Yeah, Sheldon, there's the gym.
So it may be good to think about having someone positioned at the drive there saying, no, you cannot come on school property and view here.
And it's going through Richford.
Is it
as
because
well.
their fields are accessible from 105?
Right. Not coming through Montgomery though, eh? We're not quite.
Not quite.
Wow. Very cool. Oh,
Can't tell what town, is that
Oh, yeah,
Watertower?
Watertower.
Oh, yeah, right over Berkshire Elementary
Yes,
too.
Berkshire
because the
Elementary,
librarians are
something
thinking about doing something up at the emergency services building. Letting people go up there and hang out.
yeah,
Sit
neat.
up there.
So I think it's gonna look really interesting from a lot of places, but there's something that these people who are enthusiasts are really attracted to.
Richford Elementary.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, geez, I'm cool.
Wow.
There's Richford High School.
Huh. Amazing. Okay, well, good to be proactive and be thinking about it now, even though it's April.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. So central office updates, Dominic's not here. So that brings us to Leah and Gab. If you have anything that you'd like to add or highlight from your report?
Yep, so Gab has a visual to share. Everything is listed. We have done some more school visits since we put the report together. We are looking forward to taking a pretty good sized group to the Dr. Lupo literacy work, which is tailored for high school. And we have a big in-service coming up on the 13th of October. Those are kind of the big takeaways, but then our curriculum review process is something that we were starting to work towards, and then this Lucy Coffin shift happened rather suddenly. And so it's going to get to be used quite quickly.
I actually just made a visual for myself, so
Oh, sorry.
remember the steps, so I don't have to.
Sorry, I thought you brought it. This is my laminator and I.
So I can remember the steps, but yeah, the visual is actually Leah. But I'm super excited to have a process for making decisions, because I think that's actually a missing link. So it was on my list right off, and now I'm excited that we have a process that involves stakeholders, and also I think we considered the speed with which decisions might need to be made and making sure that there was a process that was timely, because things are changing really rapidly, so that's an important component of that decision-making process.
Do you want to say anything about the symposium?
Sure, I can. There are about, I think there's 20 of us, right? 20 central office staff, also coaches.
Principals.
Principals.
And some teachers. And
some
guidance.
teachers and guidance counselors, yeah. Going to the Mastery Transcripts Consortium symposium, which is not really about the transcript itself, but brings together some organizations like Great Schools Partnership. I think redesign is one, and modern classrooms was another. So there's, it's in Boston, and we're all gonna go and sort of have a common experience. There's different workshops and presentations that we can attend. There's some schools that have been implementing mastery-based learning coming, so it'll be an opportunity for us to see some models maybe, get some ideas.
Great. Thank you. Michelle, Fresh.
I think the only other thing I have to add, other than my spending a lot of time with the STEPS program, is that after 2 meetings with the Agency of Education, I am officially out of targeted monitoring related to transition plans in special ed, and it was with some help from Lynn and a conversation with certain people at the agency. It came down to verbs that I was using on these transition plans. So I was writing like students will enroll, and I had to write will be enrolled in order to pass. So I corrected 4 of them, and I'm on target monitoring, and I'm super excited, but I'm back in sick monitoring, so it starts all over again. But at least I got that off my
Yes, the targeted monitoring is something that a lot of systems have been struggling with the agency, and just not really understanding what they're doing wrong, because it has been to that level of detail. And I know from the agency's perspective, it has to do with what the federal requirements are, but there have been some struggles with the process, and it's taken a lot of Michelle's time. So she sound travels in her new office space, and we all knew when Michelle was released from Target.
I was gonna frame the email.
Nice, bravo. Michelle Irish.
Yeah, so I think one thing I have to add, that I wrote this before it happened, but we had our first district-wide equity leadership team meeting for this year. So the last couple of years we've been in data collection phases, and we are now kind of in the improvement planning phase. So we have the summer group helped me draft an improvement plan that you have linked in your notes. It is still a draft. It was something we were going to work on at the retreat on Monday, but we haven't been able to do that, so that we'll get that back around. So the team is looking at 4 different work teams based on that improvement plan. So there'll be a work team focused on community engagement and communications, and that's really about helping to inform our community about the work we're doing and kind of give them some of the language that we're wanting people to understand. There'll be a team focused on data, because we have a lot of work to do to systematize our data collection across districts so we can compare students from different categories, and to be able to tell what the data is telling us and make plans on that based on that. So there'll be a data team. There's a team that's going to be focused on consistent behavioral expectations. It's also the same team that I think is going to be leaning into coordinating, making our handbooks more consistent across the districts, and really looking at how are we disciplining students? What kinds of strategies are we using across different schools? And then the last team is the culturally responsive curriculum and instruction team. And it's kind of probably gonna be a pretty large task of helping to do some audits of our current curriculum materials and looking to see if they're as culturally responsive or sustaining as they should be. Looking at our libraries. There's also a set of social justice standards that have come out from a group called Learning for Justice. That there's some teachers who'd like to crosswalk our priority standards with those to see where we have opportunities maybe to improve. And then I think once the school quality standards, our education quality standards are revised, we'll be looking at those as well to see how our curriculum and our instructional methods line up with those things. So those are all areas of improvement. We are still looking for the right way to engage teachers. So even though there's still a sub-shortage, still calling teachers during the day to do some of this work has been challenging. So we're looking at after school work right now. And we'll see how that goes. If we have enough people have enough bandwidth to engage in that at the end of a long day. So that's kind of the efforts we're looking at. We have, I think the exciting news is we have about 45 people signed up to be part of this work. And I think right now, half a dozen at least students came to that last meeting, and we're looking for even more to be engaged in that work as well. So that was really exciting, and it was a lot of fun.
That's great.
Yeah, it was good.
If you have a moment, the video is pretty good in your link on the difference between dignity and respect. The teachers watched it and we got some positive feedback from them.
I also included it in the community newsletter that is going out. Went out. Sorry. Yeah, it's been busy. Yeah, so that was in that as well, so people could see it.
Great, thanks so much, Michelle. Heather?
So Monday was the first day of weeks for after school for this school year. We had some pretty exciting activities that we were able to create this session. We have 3 schools doing the Linking Engineering to Life engineering program this year. Montgomery's done it this year, 3rd year in a row, so I'm bringing on some more schools with that. We're piloting something at Montgomery Elementary School that we might be doing at some of the other schools, which was separating out our brochure into 2 brochures, one for elementary students, one just for middle school students, to kind of highlight to the middle school students, which is a smaller population of our programming, the activities that we have that are designed for them. So we're going to be looking into seeing if it's an increased enrollment for middle school students or not, and if it's worth doing that in our other schools. And something that last year we tried to bring back, we did start revitalizing our theater program in Enosburg, which I've been on hiatus for a couple of years. So did you have a question? Okay, sorry. And we started a theater program at Richford. So this year, we decided to kind of combine those efforts for both schools. So in the winter, this part of the school year, Richford Junior Senior High School students are going to come to Enosburg, and they're invited to participate in the musical performance that they're going to do in the winter. And then in the spring, Enosburg students will be invited to go to Richford to participate in their production. They'll give us a larger pool of students, give students an opportunity to work with middle and high school students from the other schools in our SU, and kind of build some more camaraderie and really elevate up these theater programs that we're establishing. This is also the 5th year of our 21st Century Community Learning Center grant, and so we will be redoing our application for next year. I don't have a lot of information on that as of yet, but October is kind of the month where a lot of information is going to be coming out in statewide meetings. So I'll expect to have more information in the next board meeting, board notes. And let me see what else is in here. So the Vermont Youth Project youth councils, both councils didn't really have students in them as of the beginning of this year, and most of them all graduated and moved on. So we're, the Village of Enosburg Falls on its own was just hoping to do a kind of a junior trustees, and I was like, hey, let's maybe merge these two groups. So we're hoping to start recruiting students next week for the Enosburg's Vermont Youth Project to be actually done in partnership with the Village of Enosburg Falls, and kind of they will participate in trustees meetings as well. And that's something that I'm planning to talk with Richard about too, to see if that's something that they're interested in. I'll have stuff to share with Michael and the select board in a couple of days. I'll have applications ready and information to be able to, more tangibles to be able to share with them. And hoping to still working on youth centers in both those communities.
So thank you.
Jamie?
I just wanted to add some information about the hiring, because I was reported out on how many hires we had. So we reported that 90% of staff signed on early and came back, but it still looks like we have hired a lot of employees. Probably a third of these employees that we hired were vacancies from like 2 years ago that were never filled. So we are like, probably I'd say the closest we've been in like 4 years to being fully staffed. We only have maybe 10 to 12 professional openings. Some of those are yours that we probably won't fill this beach. So that's really good news. And then this morning I was on a phone call regarding a Visbit HR grant that we've applied for. It's a $2,500 grant, and we're going to use it to update all our job descriptions, or some of our job descriptions that we can get. And I submitted the scope of work, and they said, thanks, looks great, we're processing your grant, so I'm assuming that we're getting that. That's really all I have.
Do you want to say anything, Jamie, about we have for the first time worked to hire international teachers? Do you want to say anything about that process?
We hired 2 teachers from the Philippines, and they both work at Enosburg High School. And it was actually really, on my end, it was smooth. I don't know that Matt did too much work on his end, but they have sponsors, and they arranged everything, came over, they got their teaching license, once they got here, they got their social security number. I mean, it was great. They were great at getting the paperwork done, the license, everything in order. And so we need some more. We need some more hires.
So it's something, I feel like that is a new strategy for us, and so far so good. It's been something that they seem to be doing quite well.
And have we helped with the finding housing and some of those things?
Yeah, one teacher was being sponsored by another teacher at the high school and living with them. I think she might have got her own place now. But she came with her husband and her child, so her little girl's in kindergarten at Enosburg Elementary.
Nice.
So they're trying to get his work permit so he can come to work for us too.
Great.
Because he wants to. So, it's been great.
We have had some other people who have been interested in positions without the sponsorship. It's a little harder to get a work visa, and if they don't have I think they don't have a bachelor's degree, or they're not getting a professional job. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it that way. A licensed position, it's harder. So we've had someone from Europe trying to be able to get the documentation. Someone who's already in country, that's proving to be much harder. But
Because we can't be the sponsor.
right, our experience working with sponsor has been seamless, and we will definitely advocate for continuing to look in that direction again. We have another strategy that we put in place that I haven't actually even caught Jamie or Morgan on.
Yeah, so we just recently received an opportunity to participate in the Educators of Color Network for Vermont. So I think there was a recognition, and the Education Justice Coalition is sponsoring this Educators of Color Network across the state, recognizing that there are a lot of districts like ours that have small numbers. And so it's hard to have affinity groups in your district if there's only 1, 2, or 5 even in your whole district. So we have joined that just today. And we'll be giving opportunities for those folks to connect with other educators of color around the state. And I think that's an effort to really help support their ability to stay here and feel like they've got safe spaces and that they can continue their work here. So we're excited about that.
Nice.
Jay, you good?
Okay.
Dawn?
So I don't have a lot to add. It was pretty impressive when I saw the numbers of the amount of meals that we served through the summer between all of the programs with the LEAPs and then with partnering with Notch to provide programs feeding for their summer camps. We really did well with the summer program. That's a lot of meals that were served, and I think that we really hit all of our communities the best that we could with the cards that were dealt with.
Do you want to share those numbers, because they're really impressive, just so people watching can hear what you accomplished.
So we served 6,644 breakfasts and 9,584 lunches and 942 snacks. The snacks that we served were only served in 2 schools, and those were the 2 schools that had programs that ran and didn't take and feed breakfast and lunch. Therefore, they were we couldn't do a breakfast, lunch, and snack in one site, so you have to break it up. So we were able to do the breakfast and lunch in another site, and then those 942 students that got the snack were, I think 90% of them went to the Notch program. So they really technically had a breakfast and lunch provided by us, but they were in a different setting, and then they came into our buildings to have the snack. So.
Can you just mention how many feeding sites you operated this summer?
We have 18 sites. 18 sites in our communities. When I say 18 sites, I mean, some of the sites might have only had, like we have every year, the Enosburg Library reaches out to us and they have a program. And they ask, can you provide meals for us? So we did that. We did Vacation Bible School, they reached out to us. So it's like nonprofit sites that are around that can reach out to us and we can serve those sites, those meals. We worked with the Opera House to provide the Opera House for their camp meals. We worked with Master Snyder to provide meals for the Taekwondo camp that was up there. Richford High School does a humanities camp. We provided meals for that, so.
And then your Notch partnership.
The Notch partnership was taking place in Richford for one site that was down to the Richford Rec Center until our flood. Then that got moved up to the Richford Elementary School just because it was unsafe for the kids to be down there. So we were able to shift gears and change that around, so we were still able to feed all the meals there. And then prior to the position that I'm in, Notch did all these meals themselves. They hired kitchen staff and went into one of our schools and did these meals. And then when I took this position, I basically presented to the Notch, why don't you let us take and do the food, we'll attend to the state reviews and everything, and we'll pull that program over to us and partner with you. They were ecstatic to think that they weren't gonna have to deal with that anymore. And at that time, I was thinking the Richford site, and then Melanie said, what about taking over our Swan site as well? So we also provide the meals for the Swan kids as well at the Swan Rec Camp.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Truly. Great, thanks, Tanya. Anything else you?
No, I'm good.
All right, thank you. Melissa?
Yes, so we just started programming on September 5th, so our 3 and 4-year-olds have been in for a few weeks now. I caught one little one sleeping on their third day of school, pretty expected. And there were kids doing whole body movements around them, and they were just asleep. Adorable. So they're really in the phase of building relationships, routines, expectations, getting that set up. The exciting thing is for the last 2 years, we've been getting trainings in pyramid model, so relationships, routines, expectations, and coaching. And this year, we're kind of really starting to see that return where teachers are saying, oh, you know, the 3-year-olds that I had last year, now as 4-year-olds are getting in and remembering things and getting into those routines and expectations sooner. Same thing with the curriculums that we have in place. The kids are, you know, our 4-year-olds that were exposed to it last year are coming in and remembering some of the songs, some of the activities, and that familiarity is really great for them. Our enrollment numbers are pretty good. I think in the past 2 years we've been 160-ish, and now we're up to 176, so we're maintaining, and some of our programs that have been smaller in the past have kind of bumped up. And then what we're seeing in like the town books where they put out their births, like we're right on par with getting a good number of the kiddos that we would expect to see. Other than that, at the state level, in our Act 166 and having our licensing regulations, there are stars that's like early childhood program quality that has been revamped. And so there's a new system that's in a pilot year this year. So for us to maintain our number of stars, we can renew this year, or we can renew, each program has a different renewal date. So you can renew prior or during your actual date, but I'm hoping that and encouraging our folks to do it this year in the pilot year, so they don't have to worry about the nuances, but can just get familiar with the system to be more proficient in future years.
Thank you. Gab?
I just have a couple things to elaborate on the schedule. There's 2 visuals in my report. One is the schedule, and I just wanted to, I guess, highlight that the schedule goes from 9 to 2 because we're coordinating with steps and busing. So it's a little bit truncated. Underneath this schedule, if you can imagine that each kid has their own individual schedule, there's sort of some asynchronous times in there, there's intervention in there, there's some other pieces for each kid. And then on Friday, there's sort of this big chunk of time that looks like we do nothing. And that it's flexible work time, both for steps, students to have some potential reward time on Friday, and then also so that we can offer some in-person events and do that sort of in a consistent way so it doesn't mess with the schedule throughout the year. So in that realm, if you scroll down to the project-based learning organization, my teachers in that program have been working really hard to create projects that are coordinated with the portrait of a learner, the priority standards, and also incorporate some of those in-person events. So they're doing a really super job with that. It's a ton of work. It's a lot of moving parts. So I'm pretty impressed with what they've come up with. I hope that we have some sort of model coming out of there that we can maybe scale or utilize in some way. So.
Great, thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, just a couple updates from when I wrote this. I was hoping that I was gonna be able to tell you that we did have Sheldon Modular Building ready. Lynn and I spoke a couple days ago, and we are not gonna rush this thing. We're gonna rush it, but we're not gonna cut corners, so we're real close. The other update is the STEPS program is just about ready. Getting materials has been a challenge, and so I think we're in a really good place there. And I gotta tell you, from Morgan drawing the design on a cocktail napkin to Michelle saying what we need to seeing this through, I really think everybody put a lot of thought. Yeah. I think everybody put a lot of thought in this, and to stand back and say, okay, what's not working, what is working. And I think we were able to sit down and say, you know what, I think we gave them a pretty darn good place to go to school compared to what they came from. So I was really excited about
I
that.
think we should point out that it wasn't a cop.
Luncheon.
That's a piece of graphic
Yeah, so it was exciting, and I think everything came together really well, and it wasn't just it was a combination of a lot of thought and a lot of people putting effort into it, so I thank everyone for that. I just wanted to touch base, invoices being done in Grant. We did a pretty large project this summer to relight 8 of the 9 schools, and it went, I think, relatively smoothly. The average money that each school received from Efficiency Vermont was $10,000. I want to highlight that Enosburg Electric was able to give us another $8,000 for the elementary school, which I thought was fantastic. It's a pretty large project, and I really do think that we're going to see some. I'm hoping that I can give you some graphs down the road to show you that we just didn't do this for nothing. There's going to be some savings in it. I think it's great. And we had to do something because the money was going away, so we had to act pretty quickly this summer. The next thing I'm super excited about is we're moving forward with Richford. This Richford wood chip plant has stalled just because there's been some other things that have taken priority to it, but Morgan and I have hired a consultant that can give us a hand helping out with some of the grants and helping to kind of guide us a little bit, so I'm excited about that. And then Efficiency Vermont reached out to me. The state's really pushing the non-fossil fuel. So they really want to take a look at Berkshire. The envelope up there really fits maybe doing a pellet boiler system. One of the biggest hurdles we've got is we're out of land, so I'm working with the state right now to redesign the 3-acre permit so we can actually put another structure on that building, on that lot. So.
But I think you're out of space
Yes.
for permeable material.
Right.
Or impermeable material.
Right. There's plenty of land that we just have to restructure it. So Efficiency Vermont reached out to me, and Morgan and I and Aaron Eade, who's the head custodian at Berkshire, are going to go on a little field trip. Grand Isle put a similar system to what we're looking at, so we're going to go over and take a look at it. My ultimate goal is to not have to use any other fuel but wood if we can pull it off. So I'm excited about that. And the last update I had when I wrote this, Cross Consulting reached out to us on the parking lot for Sheldon. They gave us 3 concept drawings today. I wasn't super excited with any of them, but it's a start. So being able to get Poor Farm Road out of our parking lot in Sheldon is going to be huge. And the last thing I just want to say is this was a crazy summer, and our custodial staff in every single school went above and beyond what I could ever imagine. These guys, they put their heart into it. It's good to see some people that are still passionate about what they do, and they did a great job this summer. I can't say enough good things about our staff there. That's it.
I think you would just add a little bit about PCBs, just so that you can get the higher level.
Oh,
Yeah. Look at that. So between you two, we talk a little bit about all 3.
Sure. So on the NMD side, Bakersfield and Montgomery are new enough that they've not been tested. There's an assumption there are no materials in those 2 schools. Sheldon has recently had the initial air test cans put in and taken out, and we are waiting on those results. And given what we've seen in other districts, it could be
Enosburg as well.
6 months a year.
Or we're also waiting on Enosburg Elementary.
Enosburg Elementary's also got their cans. The 4th school in NMV is Berkshire Elementary. It had 2 areas that were suspected high with PCBs. We are next week going to be doing some deep cleaning in those spaces and doing some retesting on the air. If those rooms still are testing high, it will lead us into a direction of which physical materials and tests to try to identify the source. If those come back negative, then we will be having conversations with DEC again about whether the initial tests were valid, what we might want to do moving forward. Do we need to leave air cleaning measures in place? On the Enosburg-Richford side, Richford Elementary has been tested and those came back clean. Enosburg Elementary has been tested a long time ago and we still don't have results there. The two high schools in the tech center are in the queue to be tested. We are trying to get a more solid time frame for Cold Hollow because that board is embarking on a process that will probably lead to a bond road to do some major renovations there, and we'd like to know what they're going to find before we put something in front of members.
Great. Thank you. All right. That brings us to board business, and we are going, the board is going to need to enter executive session to do the self-assessment for the board superintendent partnership because that falls under personnel. But before we do that, I'm just going to see any future agenda items that folks want to mention now. There's certainly plenty of time to add things. Sounds like we're diving into quite a lot of budget stuff, and it did sound like, Lynn, we've got a few points of kind of content and data that we made note of at tonight's meeting to bring back for October.
Yes.
Our next meeting is going to be on October 18th here at the central office. Anything else anyone would like to before I excuse everyone and make a motion to enter executive session?
There's one thing I would like to say. We published our first edition of our FNESU community newsletter yesterday, and earlier in the meeting I asked Courtney to tell me how many views. We're at 947 views since yesterday. So I think Courtney, she did a lot of work into the design of that, and everybody in this room was a contributor to that newsletter or will be a contributor to that newsletter throughout the course of the year. So a lot of effort went in, and I hope that it is going to be a mechanism by which we can improve communication with our community, highlight the good work that we're doing here in FNESU.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know that was a heavy lift. It was awesome. Really great. I think it'll be a huge resource. And I appreciate everyone so much. It seems like, I know the start of the school year, it's always it's a heavy lift all the time, but especially this time of year. So I just wanted to reflect back to everyone how much, I think I speak for the board, and really just how much we appreciate you and all your amazing work that you do. So thank you. And with that, I'm going to make a motion to enter executive session. We'll do that by roll. Kat? Sarah? Aye. Lauren?
Aye.
Aaron? Mary is an aye. Great, thank you all so much. Okay, super. We are out of executive session. It's 8:25. We have no motions pending, and I'll make a motion to adjourn. Kat's no longer with us, but we still do have a quorum. So all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
All right, great.
Oh,
I thought you said that. Whether we had released you to go and get some rest. Okay, we are all in favor. Have a nice night, drive safe. Thank you so much.